Hey guys, it's Maymay, and on Sunday you would have seen us reveal the new club set, which is the All Aglow set with this lantern. And I showed you this slider card that I made that you take one of the tea lights and you slide it inside and it lights that lantern. And as I suspected, lots of you wanted to see this one made. Now, just so you know, I've made this card before, this style of card. This is the first time I put a tea light in it. But I've gotten a lot of mileage out of this card, and I think if you learn how to do it, you'll get the same kind of mileage. So let's make one today. All right, so what we're going to do first is our stamping. Let's go ahead and get that done. So this is just a piece of white cardstock, and I'm going to stamp my lantern first. Now you need to decide how you're going to do your lantern. This one in particular, I use color pencils on, and I like how that turned out, but I think I want to use markers today. That means I need to change my ink. So instead of using my VersaFine Onyx Black, which I normally use, I'm really enjoying this Finesse by Spectra Noir. I really like it. We have it in 4 colors in the store. I've used it a lot. Anytime I pull out my alcohol markers, this is the one I'm using. Now, you won't get the same kind of result that you do with your VersaFine. The VersaFine is a pigment ink. It's much, much richer and thicker, and the pigment kind of sits on the page, where this is a dye ink, and so it dyes the page, so it sinks in a little bit. So you can see how I'm really, really, really going over that ink pad. Now, I'm not looking to place this in any particular spot. I'm just looking to get the image itself stamped. So I'm just going to stamp this down here. Now that one's a little pale for me. It did really well here, but I'm going to do it again and see if I can get that even better. So I'm going to turn this over. I'm not going to waste it. I am saving myself some space. I'm going to turn it this way. I've got a little something on there. I'm going to save myself some space for the flowers. So I'm going to stamp that again. And sometimes that happens, especially when you're using a dye ink that maybe isn't super, super juicy. So I'm going to get in here and get that really inked up well. Sometimes it's better to take the pad to the stamp. And this particular pad has a little bit of a bend in it. It's a little concave, I think is the word for it. So I have to be super careful when I'm inking and make sure I get that ink everywhere. All right, let's ink that. Let's stamp that this time and see what we get. Much better. I'm much happier with that. It's going to be paler. It is a dye versus an ink. Versus a pigment. Okay, I still need this because I want to do my flowers. So I also want to show you something with the flowers. So on this card in particular, you notice that I laid the flowers long ways. I laid them wide. This time I'm going to turn them up and make them taller. The reason I'm going to do this is some of you guys might find, let me get that little light out of there for a second. Some of you guys might find that you don't want them to be this wide depending on the project you're making. So if instead of stamping them this way, you take this guy and turn him up and put him over here, you can get a thinner look. And that's what I'm going to do on this one. At the end, I'll compare the two. It'll make more sense. All right, so I'm going to take that stamp and ink it up really well, moving it all around that pad. And then I'm just going to nestle it here at the bottom. And this time, my flowers will run upwards instead of down. See what I'm saying? So they're going up instead of out, and that works as well. So I need that side now. I need the opposite side. So you can change that up, and both sets of flowers on this stamp set will do either direction you want to go in. I thought I'd just show you how you could do one wide and one tall, and you can go really, really close if you want to. I want it to kind of mimic the other side. Fairly similar. It doesn't have to be perfect. So look how pretty that is. I love that. Okay, so now we can color. So I decided to do some kind of different colors for my card today, just to step outside the box. So this kind of blue and green, kind of minty blue and green, and this wood are going to be the colors I'm going to use. So I'm going to sit these off to the side where I can see them, and I'm going to pick my colors accordingly. I'm going to start with the poinsettias because I know I want this to be red. So let me find a red that I want to use for them. And I'm using this whole piece of paper, right? I'm going to cut this out so I can use this corner to check my colors and make sure they're right. And that's what I'm going to do. Now, I'm not doing any fancy coloring. I am just coloring. I am literally going to do no shading, no nothing. I'm just going to color this guy. So I tell you what we'll do. We'll put on some music and let you watch me color. for the fun part. Before I take this, before I fussy cut this out or bubble cut it, I am going to trim out all of the light areas inside of here. So I'm just going to use my craft blade, and this is my pen blade, and I'm going to make little notches at the top and the bottom of where I want to cut, and then I'm going to make more passes, less pressure. Remember, I've taught this top tip before. So more passes, less pressure until I feel it go through, and I felt that go through then. That went through just fine. And then I'm just going to go around and make sure I cut all of these little pieces out, and that way we can put vellum behind it and make it really glow. Now that I've got it cut out, what I'm going to do is take the same color that I colored the lantern with and just go over and make sure all the edges, because they're not perfect, I just want to make sure I color all those in. You think this won't matter and that you won't need to do this, but the truth of the matter is when you put the vellum behind it, it will kind of make it stand out. So if you don't get all those white edges colored the same, they'll kind of stand out. Now for the real fun part, we can bubble cut this. And what I mean by bubble cut is, please don't try to cut every petal. It won't matter. You're just going to cut just kind of in the shaping that you see. And I promise when you're done, it'll look like you had a die or you had an SVG or you had something that lined up perfectly, but you don't have to stress over it. By the time you're done, it will look so good, even if you think your cutting is not perfect. And if you want to cut down in there, like if you want to cut in a bit, like so, you can do that. And then you can just cut to that, like so. And here's another thing. If you're ever going to pull paper away, pull it to the back, not the front. That way, any little edges that aren't so cute or they get furry will go to the back of the page and it won't leave you any little furry lines. It's so funny to me that this project always looks bad until it looks good. So just keep going. If you're like, I'm not liking how this is turning out, keep going. Now another thing I'm going to do, because I stamped on white and colored it on white paper, but I don't want the paper to look white, I'm going to use another one of my markers and I'm going to color the little offset that I cut. This also helps hide any little imperfections, and I'm just going to let it just kind of touch everywhere I went and color in the white underneath. So this way it'll look as though I stamped on gray paper. You could stamp on gray paper. Here's why I didn't. I wanted my colors to be more vivid. I wanted them to be the actual colors of the markers. So instead I stamped on the white paper. This just takes a little of that stark white out for me. And this is like one of those preference things. It's not necessary, but it's a preference that I have. And so once you start to color, you'll find things that you like to do as well. I love to color on white paper because it doesn't change the color of my marker, but I don't really want white paper on this project, at least not in this area. I am using white paper somewhere else. So if this is not for you, if you want to leave it white, go right ahead. So I'm just going to go around and color all of this up so it looks like we got gray paper, and we'll go to our next step. Now I will warn you, doing that last little step I did with the alcohol marker can cause your markers to bleed. It didn't this time, but it can cause like your reds and stuff to bleed. So be real careful when you get around the reds doing that little trick. All right, the next thing I've decided I want to do is ink the edges of this with some vintage photo. I just think it just really helps this cut, the way I cut this out. I think this just really helps to kind of make it feel a little more vintage, a little more distressed. So I'm just going to run around and just ink this up. Even though I have that alcohol marker on there, I just think this really ties everything together. Keeps it from being quite so stark. You can even take it and kind of rub it in a little bit if you want a little more of the distress. I'm going to do a tiny bit. I'm not going to, I would hope if I keep it in camera. I'm not going to do it in here because I want it to feel like the light is glowing here. But the darker we do the edges, the brighter the middle is and the brighter it will make our light feel. I'm not going to get in there close, just the edges, so that it will feel like there's shadow out here toward the edge. Distress ink hides a multitude of issues that we have there. Okay, I have a little piece of fuzz I want to get rid of right here. Okay, so my lantern's going to live right here. I need my template. Now, there is a video that I have that will show you how to make this template and do this card, and I also have a blog post for it. I'm going to link all that for you, but basically, here's what you do. This piece, I'm going to tell you the size of it real quick, is 2¼ nope, that's 2½ by 4½, and I have put a pencil mark at 3/4. Okay, that's the biggest thing you need to know. And what you'll do with this piece, this is your pattern, you're going to lay it where, see how I have that center line running there? You're going to put that center line on your center line up here. I'm using my my cutting board. I couldn't think what that was called, my cutting mat, to help me line that up. And this piece is 4 by 5¼ so it's just the mat size of an A2 size card. Do not worry about getting all these measurements. They will be in the blog post that I'll link below for you guys. But here's what you want to do. You want to go to that pencil mark that you made at 3/4 inch, and you want to trace down on the side, trace down on the bottom, and then you want to come back to that pencil mark here and trace all the way down the side. This is the easiest way for me to get this card done. I just didn't want to do all that fancy center cutting with my trimmer and stuff. I'm going to use my cut blade to do it, and this makes it easier. You really need to watch that other video, which I will link for you if you want to see this walked through. Super easy. All right, now I need to cut these lines with my blade. So everywhere there's a pencil mark, I'm going to make a slice. Now I feel like my pencil mark is pretty obvious, so I'm just going to go ahead and erase it real quick before I do any bending to this piece. This is the piece that's going to be our slider on our card. So I'm just going to erase this pencil real quick. Now we're going to score this piece. Now I only want to score it from slice to slice. Okay, so I put this into my trimmer this way. This is that 3/4 inch spot, and I want to score it at 3/4 inch from the slice to the slice. So what I'm doing is finding that mark. There it is. So there's my 3/4 inch. And if you were to score it here, it's not the end of the world if you just kind of ran it the whole way, but you don't need to. You only need to score that center slice piece. So I'm going to show you a trick. Your next score is at 2 1/4. So what I do is I take my ruler and I line it up at 2 1/4, and I just kind of run my embossing tool beside it. And when I get to where I want to score, I put the pressure down. And if you don't feel like that's scored, you might want to move your ruler a little bit and make sure you're getting it into the right spot. You'll feel it kind of lock into the groove, just like if you were scoring. See, that one did. I felt that one lock into the groove. So we got that one scored. And now the last one I want to do is the 4-inch mark. So I'm going to come right here, put my ruler down, come right here. Oh, I felt that sink in right away, and make my score mark. Now what we'll do is our first score at the top, we're going to fold backwards. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and crease that down while I'm here. There's our first one. Our second score goes forward. We're doing a little mountain valley fold. So I'm going to go ahead and crease that one down as well. There we go. And then this last score goes forward. So that's our little 4-inch mark, and we can crease it down also. This will be what allows our lantern to slide and will house the tea light. Okay. So now that you've got this piece all ready to go and you've got this piece nice and cut out, here's your next step. You're going to place this at your 4-inch fold. So I'm going to lift that up so you can see it. There we go. So there's my 4-inch fold at the bottom. So I'm going to place this to that mark, okay? And then I'm going to center it on my little slider piece there. Now I need to cut out this slider piece where it's going to show behind here. So here's what I'm going to do. Take my pencil. Use a different pencil that's got a sharper lead on it. My other one's a little bit dull, okay? And I'm going to trace the line on the outside of the lantern. So you see I'm just tracing the outside. You don't need the X marks, just the outside line. I'm going to trace that. And then with my ruler, I'm going to close that in. Now here's the thing. I do not have to cut past that score line in the middle. I'll show you what I mean. Because that score line is going to go to the back of the card, I really only need to cut here in the front of that score line. So I'm just closing that box up so I'll know where to cut. Just like so. And I need to cut this box out. Okay, so again, I do not have to do this top part because it goes over the score line. So I can just erase that pencil mark at the top. Now here's what I did. I took my scissors. I like my little snips because I got this really pointy part. I took this and I poked it into the middle. I'm going to do that where you guys can see what I'm doing. Like so. And then I just cut it out by hand without my knife. You can use your knife, and I use mine most of the time, but I found that this was not too hard to do with my little snips, to just take this little guy out like this. Let's feed this up here. And then come around to the other side. Now, you see how rough that box is cut? Do not worry, you're not going to see it. Looks like a light switch, doesn't it? It's funny. When we put our vellum on and when we do this, that will hide. You will not see it. I might need to trim that a little bit more. I told you guys wrong. I want to make sure I correct this. I did cut this out at the top. I was thinking that I didn't because that score piece will fold backwards. But when I looked at my finished card a minute ago, I was like, why is that still showing? I did cut this section out as well. You'll see it won't get glued on, but I cut it to get it out of my way. I kept thinking, I don't remember not cutting that off, but I did. So there we go. I'm going to come back real quick, snip this little edge off that doesn't need to be there. And then when we put our little lantern on, it'll look good. Okay, don't worry about how bad your rectangle looks. When you put your little lantern down, all that goes away. It hides, you won't see it, it's perfectly fine. Now what we need to do is put our vellum on the back of here. Now I told you that I got ahead of myself, I think I told you, but I got ahead of myself earlier and I glued my vellum down too quick and I didn't want you to do that. So we've cut that out of the video and that's why the back of my page looks pretty rough back here because I had to take that off. But I'm going to put another piece of vellum on it now. And I've just cut a piece of vellum that will just cover the back of it. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just did this with some scissors off of a piece of vellum that I have. And so I'm going to run some glue around the lantern here, around the outside. And then I'm going to run some glue up the middle. Now, I don't want too much glue because I don't like whenever my glue seeps onto my vellum. And I also don't like to slide my vellum on my glue. So I'm going to sit it down and see how that's getting a little bit thick down there at the bottom. It's not my favorite. And I'm going to try to keep from squishing that vellum out too much. The reason is my glue is matte finished. And on this vellum, sometimes it can show when it comes through. And I don't want to encourage that to happen. So let me get this down like it needs to be. There we go. Okay, our lantern is ready to be installed. Do not worry about the back. It's going to hide on here like so. You just want to make sure you have it where it's glued to that 4-inch score line. So that way when it pulls up, it'll sit flat. Let me show you what I mean. You see how I glued this to that 4-inch score line? So when it does this, it sits flat. There we go. All right, so I can glue this guy down. He's ready to go. Don't glue above this score line. You want to run a little glue down the side here, and then run a little glue down the side here, and then you want to run some glue across the base here. That way, you don't have glue showing at the top. So just get your little rectangle covered, and you can slide that. You could put this higher if you wanted to. I'm just putting it in this spot because I think it works, but you can put it up higher. This way, when this gets lifted, see how it sits nice and flat? That's what we're looking for. Okay, now we need to work. Actually, we need to do something here to the top real quick. So this is my 3/4 inch circle punch. And what I want to do at the top of the card is I want to punch like almost like a thumb hole. So I'm just going to come in and just kind of in the center and halfway down, make a slot. And that's where I'm going to put my little pull device so it can come out. All right, let's make our banner piece for the bottom. So this is the piece that's going to have my sentiment. It's going to have the all aglow sentiment. And it's going to get glued right to the fold line here, but I need to doctor it up and make my cuts and all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and stamp it. On my original piece, I embossed this. On my original card, I embossed it because I used a dark color. But since I'm using this lighter color, I'm not going to worry about embossing it. I'm just going to stamp it with this. Now, I want to make sure I leave plenty of room to do my ribbon cut and plenty of room to put my sentiment above the all aglow sentiment. Because on my card, let's get that to fall off. There we go. On my original card, I put the sentiment Lovely Winter Wishes with hearts. So it says with hearts all aglow. That's going to go above here. So now I'm going to stamp Lovely Winter Wishes with hearts above. So we'll say Lovely Winter Wishes with hearts all aglow. Just like that. I love that. Love it. I got a little crooked, but guess what? She ain't going to stress about it. She is going to stress about it. She's looking at it right now and she's stressing about it. So let's do a fix. You want to see what happens if you get it crooked and you don't want to redo it? Watch this. If you're brave and you take your long scissors, this is what I like to use. I can trim this so that it doesn't look as crooked here at the top before I do the bottom. Okay, see how I fixed that? Now what I need to do is trim the bottom to match that angle. So what I'm going to do is hold it like so, and I'm going to trim the bottom to match. Watching the top angle. You don't have to do this. This is totally eyeballing and it can be rough on you. Now let's make our little ribbon cut. So I'm going to come right here. This is a shallow ribbon, okay? Very shallow cut because I don't have a whole lot of room to work with at the bottom. So it'll look good on the card, but it is very shallow at this point. So you see we've got the points, but it's not a whole lot of space. Because where this is going to live on the card, you don't have as much space as you necessarily would normally have. See how that is? Now it can hang a little longer than that because I do have a card mat going down here, but this works for me. I think this looks good. So this piece can now get glued on. Lots of mistakes today. It's funny. It's Sunday afternoon. It's very quiet and peaceful, and I'm just in the craft room working on filming this video, and for some reason, I'm having lots of little flub ups today. All right, here's a flub up we don't want to have, okay? You want to make sure that you do not you do not glue this over that fold line. If you do, it will not lay right. So go ahead and do a test and make sure that'll lay nice and flat. That looks pretty. I like that. These colors are different. I kind of like these colors too. All right, now let's work on the inside. This is explained in better detail in the video I'm going to link for you guys from my original tutorial, but I cut for myself 6 1/4-inch strips of cardstock that are going to help me to lift this up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue these down. The reason I'm using the cardstock for this is I didn't want it to be as thick as foam tape, because if I did it with foam tape, it would be loose and my card may not stand up on its own. Now, since we're making this one with a tea light inside, I don't have quite the same concern, but this is how I made the first one, so I'm making it exactly the same. So what you do is you take these 1/4-inch strips and you glue them 2 thick, not TOO thick, but TWO thick, so 2 layers high around 3 sides of the card, the bottom and the sides, not the top. You want to leave that top open for your slider to come out of. I'm just going to put these down here. I'm using the coordinating paper so you can see what I'm doing. If you don't want to use the coordinating paper, you can just use any old scrap paper you've got for this, but I wanted you to be able to see exactly what I was doing here. That floral is pretty loud. Don't worry about what's hanging off the edges. We'll trim that off later. That keeps you from having to measure these perfectly. It's really good for scrap. This is a great place to use your little scrap pieces up. So many of you made the card from the original tutorial. I've seen pictures on our customer gallery of them. They look amazing. It's so easy to do, this little slider card. The original one I did with the perfume bottle stamps. I don't know if y'all remember that one, but it's so pretty. Again, it'll be linked. Make sure you check that one out. I think it will help you if you're confused, because this is not as much a tutorial about the card itself as it is about using that lantern. Okay, got this guy glued down. And now all you do, take your scissors and just trim this way. I like to trim from the front so I make sure I don't cut into the front of the card. There's 1, 2, and then the last one. All right, now we're getting to the fun part. Now this piece is going to be my slider piece, and it's going to live right inside of the card like this. And if you notice on the original that we did, I did a sentiment here. So if you want to do a sentiment, you need to go ahead and stamp it right now so that you have that in there before you do anything else. For this video, I'm not going to do a sentiment there. I just want to show you how that works since I have a sentiment over there. But here's what you do to put this inside. So on the card front, this little piece right here, which is where our 4-inch fold is, I'm going to turn it this way so you'll see it. That little piece right there, that's where your glue goes, okay? So you put your glue only on that little piece. You don't want to glue anything else down, just that little section. And then taking this piece, what I do is I match it up at the top and make sure it's centered in the card. I'd rather it be matched up at the top so I don't have any stress about it. And then I glue this straight down, just press it down. So this piece fits right inside, and this is going to be the piece that we'll attach our little piece to, and it will do that. See, it's super easy. That's why you only glue that little this is the 4-inch score mark. That little fold that sits flat is all that gets glued down. All right, we need to make our little pull tabs for here. So I love the little blue and white dot. I think it'll be cute at the top. This is my 3/4 inch scallop punch. I'm just going to punch out 2 of these from a little scrap of that same paper. Look how cute, there's a little pumpkin in that one. And then what I'm going to do is glue it down right inside here. So what I like to do is put a little glue here and place the first one just like so. And you just, let the little scallops stick out whatever way you want them to, like so. Then I flip this page over and now I glue it to the back of that same one. So here and here, and this becomes our little pull tab. And you just line these scallops up exact. And then it looks like a little piece that was meant to be there. All right, so there's all of that. Now, the easy part, and that is this. This piece is my base. This piece is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. It is the size of an A2 size card. This guy will get glued to it, and the only place you glue it, you guessed it, is along those little strips that you did earlier. That's to give it the height so that it can slide. Okay, so I just do that, and I'm going to mat this on this piece so that I have a little bit of a border all the way around, top, bottom, and side. Just like that. You do not want to glue your middle piece down. You only want to glue the edges. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick pull to make sure I didn't, and I did not glue any of that down, so we're good. Okay, so that is the front of the card. That's what would go in the envelope. Now I want to show you, because I used a red piece here, you'll want to glue another piece to the back that you might put a sentiment on or something so you can sign your card. You might even think about maybe printing out your Christmas sentiments and put it on your cardstock before you glue them down. Whatever you'd like to do, that's what needs to happen here. I don't know what sentiment I'm going to put on here. Again, I'm that person that likes to wait till the card is sent or know what I'm going to use it for before I've finished it completely. But I do like how much stability this card gets when I go ahead and put this back piece on, because it's not as thick as a regular card because we have cut away. We don't have 2 pieces, we just have the 1 piece. So that helps this to be much sturdier. So now you just lift this little guy up. So you can see why you would want a sentiment in the back. So when they pull out this white piece, they can see it. Doesn't have to be white, by the way. You can stamp a sentiment here, but let me show you something. With my tea light, and these are the tea lights we carry in the store. They're kind of small, and I think they work. I don't know. Let me see if a big tea light would work. So this is a bigger tea light. I'll turn that little guy on, and let's see if a regular one will fit. It just won't slide in there. They're too big for this spot, so you're going to need this smaller tea light. You don't have to get them just from me. They have them all over the place. They have them on Amazon. I think they might have them at the dollar store. I don't know for sure. But see how low I need to keep that for that tea light to sit in there? That's why I didn't worry too much about stamping inside here. I just thought this would be pretty all on its own, just like that. I love this card. I love that the tea light doesn't fall out. I love that this won't be knocked around on someone's desk or what have you, and they, won't have a problem with that. And also, it's still pretty easy to get that little guy out to turn him off. You just twist him to turn him off, just like that, and they twist to turn on. Isn't that cool? These are also waterproof, by the way. It's really cool. That's what that seal is for. All right, so there is the second version of this little guy. Let's light him up too. I wanted to show you this as well. See how this one is different? See the light? I don't have these tea lights in store. These tea lights have the blue light. Our tea lights are the warm light, because I think I typically am doing candlelight in cards. But these are some you can find, at Walmart or at Amazon or probably even the dollar store. I know that craft stores carry those. So if you like the whiter light, you can do that. I personally, in this one in particular, like the warmer light. Let me change it out, because I think the warmer light looks more candlelight to me. So let's do this little guy and slide him in there like so. Isn't that cute? I just love it. So there's our 2 cards, and it does look good to have the little sentiment stamped up there. I just didn't do it today. I can always go back and do it. So there you go. I know that you guys wanted to see it, because before I came to the shop to film this today, I was already looking at your comments, and you were all saying you want to see the interactive or the lantern with the slider card. So there you go. That's your Tuesday video, and I think it's really cool. Also, notice real quick, remember how I showed you I would point this out? See how this one is taller and not as wide, and this one is wider. If you want them to be taller, you just turn the way you stamp them. If you want them to be wider, you go this way. I like them both. I think they look really good. Also, when this is standing up, it looks like it's hanging over the edge of the card, but when it's flat, it will fit in your envelope even with them being wide like that. There you go, guys. A little lantern card. I love it. This set, by the way, is called All Aglow. I love this set. Let me find it to show you. Here it is, All Aglow. It's so pretty. I just love it. I hope you guys are enjoying it as much as me. You'll probably see it several times because I got some other ideas for this little guy right here. Thanks so much, guys. Remember, if you make this, you know I want to see it. Head over to our customer gallery and post photos of your projects using this stamp set. And by the way, club sets have a contest. Every time you post an image, a new image of a new project that you've done using a club set, you're entered to win a $50 gift card that we announce whenever we release our next club set. Hey, thanks so much for watching, guys. Talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.